I'm James Brierton. It is Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. A special live edition of the Carolina Weather Group starts right now. It is Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. I'm James Brierton in Charlotte, and this is a big, massive virtual celebration of the Carolina Weather Group. It is episode 400. I can't believe it is episode 400. That doesn't count any of our specials, live storm coverage, crazy, insane. That's just 400 Wednesdays in a row that we've been here talking weather, science, technology, and more for the Carolinas. Above me, we got Scotty Powell. Next to him, we got Jared Smith, Evan Fisher, Shay Gibson, Frank Strait. I used to do weather in front of a key wall, and apparently I forgot how to invert which way I point. Joining us again, Candice Jordan is here. You saw her just earlier this month, and we said, Candice, we want to make tonight extra special, and we want to put you on the spot, and we want to turn the tables. Can you come on and just ask us whatever it is you want to ask about us here at the Carolina Weather Group? Because that's what we're going to do tonight. We're just going to kind of peel back the curtains. I'm going to hang out like we're all friends. I would say nothing's off limits, but there are definitely things that are off limits.
Yeah.
But
like
if you want, you know.
It's like, in math, technically there's limits, but sometimes we just kind of.
Right. Like within reason, internet. And if you're watching
we ignore
live,
friction.
Right. Certain rules do apply. And if you're watching live on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Twitch tonight with us, then please use the comments to ask your own appropriate questions, and we will get to those shortly. And we're looking forward to most of those, probably not all of those. If you're listening on our audio podcast feed, then we love you as well. And don't forget to reach back out to us later if you have any questions, and we'll try to answer them. Candice has a live studio audience with her tonight, which is awesome. No, we love that because this is a big friends and family type gathering. And Candice, that's enough talking for me. So I'm going to stop hosting. I'll keep directing. And I told them I won't. I also said I won't be producing. So there'll be no time cues or anything tonight. So
Perfect.
Candice, the floor is yours. Thank you for doing this, by the way.
You're welcome. And my live studio audience is my almost 3-year-old and my 4.5-year-old. So if you hear random noises, it's just my life in a nutshell.
There may be noises from down my hall, so it's all good.
So we're going to do first question, hot seat kind of rapid fire question. What is your favorite type of weather? Go.
I've got snow on the mind. But I'm going to say snow. I'm going to say snow because it's fun and not dangerous. Evan Fisher.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy one for me. It's going to have to be high wind. I feel like that's kind of become my thing over the last year. So anything over 100 miles an hour, I'm there. Shay.
Boy, tough call here because I tell you what, I'm all about sea breeze structure along the coastline. That's really what I would love to study. But I am also really, really heavy into tropical cyclone studies.
I want to say snow, but I also enjoy watching a good thunderstorm. So I'm going to combine the two and put thunder snow.
Afternoon thunderstorms in the summer.
Sunny and 72 because I'm lazy.
Ooh. Sounds wonderful.
That does sound good.
That is awesome. I would say thunderstorms rank up there with me. And then I absolutely adore atmospheric optics. So sundogs, halos, fire rainbows, circumzenithal arcs, that's my jam there.
Oh, we didn't even get, you didn't bring up cloud types. I mean, that's some of the funnest stuff right there. I love cloud types. Oh my gosh, love it.
Exactly. Okay, so let's start out. We're talking about show 400. So out of the 400 episodes, well, I guess 399 episodes, which one has been your favorite or which one has been the most memorable for you guys?
Ooh. So I'll start this one first. This is one that we did way back when. We had Mark Prater on talking about the April 27, 2011 tornado outbreak in Alabama. And that was the first time I ever seen a guest actually get emotional on our show. And just recalling what happened that day. So that one really has stuck with me a lot, is that show.
Evan?
Yeah. So sorry, I didn't see I popped up. I was looking for the name of the interviewer or interviewee. So one of my favorite shows, most informative, actually, in my opinion, was a show we did with Emily. Let me get this last name right. Emily Linhart and one of her associates about words of estimative probability. And it was all about how we communicate the weather to the public. We've done, so many shows. All of them are excellent, but that one in particular stuck out to me as something that I could directly apply to my everyday life and my forecasts that go out to the public.
Shay's thinking real hard.
I'll go next. I tell you, we've had so many amazing guests on this show. There's so many you could just pick from, probably 200, some of the top shows that we've had easily. But I'll go with one of the more educative shows that we've had that I feel was really educative, and something that we're battling along the coast is coastal resiliency to sea level rise and flooding. And so we had Doug Marcy from NOAA Digital Services Center here in Charleston, where I live. And I got to meet with him in person and just, tell him I'd like to have him on the show. And he agreed to come on. He had a whole presentation ready. And he went through the SLR viewer and explained all the science, all the details and everything behind it, where it was like no bias. It was just there. Like, the occurrences are happening even with sunshine and all the factors that go into it. And it just really kind of really, I guess, solidified my position on it and how I convey messages to the public as well. Because when you're talking to no individuals like that, you're getting non-biased information. So I really enjoyed that show a lot. And he came back on with us a couple years later to reaffirm what we already knew, Jared, right? We're seeing more and more of it. So yeah, man, that was my favorite.
Yeah, Doug was great. I'm going to show my recency bias here. And I really think the last show that we did with Jim Cantore, rounding out 2021, just some exceptional ground covered on that one. And just, I urge you, if you haven't seen it, watch it. There's really, really, really interesting insights from the Face of the Weather channel. Happy birthday to him, by the way. Today is Jim Cantore's birthday. So so I figured, let's mention the birthday boy a little bit. But yeah, that one was great. We've had so many good ones. Span was awesome. Just so many, we've learned so much across 399 episodes.
Oh, my turn now. I was just thinking that probably the most memorable episode is probably the one we all like least, but I won't go into details on that. But I will say that I think between the two, my favorite one.
Certain things are off limits tonight.
I realize that. I think there are two that I would have to mention as being my most favorite. One would be the one we had Richard Neal from Frying Pan Tower. I think that was a great show.
Oh yeah,
and a lot of fun. And the other would also be the Jim Cantore interview that we just had. It's always great when we have Jim on it. He has a lot of great insight, and he's fun and also attracts a lot of people.
I want to know what blackmail Shea Gibson has on Jim Cantore that he gets him to show up year after year. We love having him on, but I think you've got something on him. I'm going to say Dave Malkoff, keeping with the Weather Channel theme. And it's been several years, but it was one of the first shows I did after Scotty invited me on. And I thought, wow, these guys are really cool. And then I don't know what happened after that.
We suckered you in, and then big disappointment, huh?
There's a lot of cool tech in that show. We get to talk a lot of weather.
You got to geek out about radio stuff. I
think that's probably what stands out in my brain.
Yeah,
that was all a ploy there.
I had to share this for Jim Cantore's birthday, so I don't know if the restream can pick it up, but yeah, we had to give him a good shout out for his. So I couldn't resist on that one. Yeah. We had when we had him on the show, frankly, we all got a question to ask him, anything we wanted, and that was one. How enjoyable was that? Or
yeah, he was mad he missed.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna kind of go. We're gonna do these things called lightning rounds. Ha ha ha.
Okay.
All right. So your favorite color? Go.
Blue.
Purple.
I better just put the boxes like this if we're going to do lightning rounds. Red.
Black.
Green.
Sky blue.
Oh boy.
Sky blue. Nice. Good choice.
Awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, sky blue's good. We'll go with that one.
All right. So where do you guys hail from? So we're talking like Carolina Weather Group.
Yeah.
Where in the Carolinas does everybody hail from?
Start with Evan.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Carolina born and raised. Born in Charlotte, lived in the general Charlotte area around Lake Norman for the first 13 years of my life. And then I've been in Asheville for the most part since I was 13 with a 2-year stint in Charleston. The only time in my life I've been in South Carolina for some college. And then I smarted up and came back to the mountains because I just couldn't stay away. Sorry, Jared. I know you missed.
Oh
me.
no, it's all good, man. No, it's good. So I guess I would technically be a bit of a carpetbagger because I was born in San Diego, moved around a bunch, and the last place I lived was in the Northeast before I moved down here, full time. But I've been here a vast majority of my life. I mean, I've did school here, did all the things right here in Charleston, or if you want to be specific, Goose Creek, about 21 miles up the road. Home of the Kia, for those of you who are local to us, the Kia dealership that says Goose Creek, that place. So,
Do that again.
Goose Creek. I have to get off of the mic to do that. But
Like
yeah,
Goose Creek, just a honk down the road.
exactly. Stokes Kia, Goose Creek. Yeah, they don't sponsor us, so I really shouldn't say that. But all that being said, yeah, I mean, this is. I've tried to leave here a couple times. I can't do it. It's just there's an attraction here. Traffic nightmares and everything. Traffic nightmares, flooding, what have you. All of the warts that make a place a home. And this is. I've been very fortunate to be here, and to watch this place just absolutely, grow almost unrecognizably, which has its good days and its bad.
Yeah, I'm with Jared. I grew up here in Charleston, so I hail out of here. So I grew up watching folks like Rob Fowler, Bill Walsh, and now I'm part of their team, and we all, and Jared as well. We all are a weather team here in Charleston, and with the Weather Service, and also I love it. And it was a destination city far beyond. I'm sorry, like back before it was named a destination city. So. It's always been a treat to come back to whenever you go on vacation because shoot, it's beautiful here. It really is. Even through all the growth and development and all the craziness and the sprawl, it's still, when you get out on the water and go out and do things out on the ocean, it's just absolutely gorgeous. So.
Frank, go ahead.
Well,
I'll let you finish out the South Carolina contingency.
All right. South Carolina guy, born and raised. I grew up in Rock Hill. And from there, spent a little bit of time in Columbia, starting college and a family. After that, Asheville for 5 years. That's where I went to school and got my degree from UNC Asheville. After that, 20 years up north in State College, PA, working for AccuWeather. Then back down south after a downsizing, and a little bit of time with my parents. And now I live in Columbia and back home in South Carolina, and thrilled to be here working for the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources in the State Climatology Office.
So I live in Morganton, North Carolina, the foothills. If you don't know where Morganton is at, it's between Asheville and Charlotte, kind of the foothills, the Blue Ridge Mountains. Spent a couple summers in Myrtle Beach, some time up in Boone at Appalachian. So Western North Carolina person all the way around. And that's where I'm from.
I'm a Yankee born and raised, although I never would have used that term until I moved south because I'm a Mets fan. Long Island to Georgia to Charlotte in 2014. Came on the show first as a guest after that, working at a television station that has changed names 18 times, and been Been here for Scotty, help me out. 6 years. 6 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know, right?
I had hair when this started, so okay. But I still call sandwiches heroes and not hoagies.
And now you have a light bright in the background with a lit up computer.
Yeah, that's New York City subway, by the way. Like here's Manhattan, and here's Staten Island, and Queens, and Brooklyn, and yeah, that's what that is.
I keep looking at that. I don't know why. I'm just like, what?
Because it's distracting. That's probably
It's mesmerizing.
That's a hole in the wall, literally, and that's radio spectrum. So there you go.
Nice. I am also Carolina, born and raised, grew up in Lincoln County. So woohoo! And went to school at UNCA. So yeah, go Bulldogs. And then I went to school at Western for a little bit. I went to school at ECU a little bit. Worked in Greenville, North Carolina. The only time I've really been out of the Carolinas is my 4-month stint in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I'm just a Carolina girl. Let's just say that. And I am also a Mets fan as well. I really, really love meteorologists.
Oh!
One of those Mets win, and one of those Mets do not.
Yeah.
And one of those Mets can be wrong half of the time and still get paid.
Oh,
Are we still talking
here
baseball?
We go. Here we go.
I mean, they do play 500
Yeah,
balls
James, you
most of the
nailed it.
time.
You got the right net. You can still be paid.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
I think it
Lord.
works for both.
It does work.
Oh.
All right, what?
All right,
Yep.
so let's see here. So, what is your favorite type of precipitation? Rain, snow, sleet, or hail? Go.
Ooh, snow, all the way. I can be quick about it.
Snow. There's no question about it.
I went to Franklin because the cat was there.
I guess it's hail,
Nice.
as long as it's not too big.
Grapple.
Oh,
Was that a choice?
Look at
Oh,
Jared
I wish I would have thought of that.
Grapple is a choice, and it's a darn good one.
Jared went hybrid. See, I was going to say ash, right? But that's not. You can't count that. Yeah, snow for me. Snow for sure.
I'll also say snow.
Ash is
I will go the
apocalyptic.
hail route.
Yeah.
Actually, hail is also as good a choice as grapple because most hailstones actually, excuse me, start with grapple.
You don't have to be so emotional. about it.
I know. Let's have a drink of beer.
Yeah, I will never forget the first time I got grappled
Problem
on.
solved.
Is there a story there, Jared?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was driving around.
I know, I was like-
I was driving around DuPont Circle in Washington D.C., and all of a sudden, a bunch of ice started falling on the. And it was like, okay, are you serious? Is this really happening right now? Because you're driving in Washington D.C. Okay, first of all, already a bad idea. Second of all, and then it starts, grappling on me, and so I'm sending tweets to Sterling. It's like, hey guys, Washington's doing something kind of funny right now. There's a bunch of ice and grapple falling here. So y'all have fun with that. I was like windshield wiping grapple off of the thing. It was like somebody dumped, like ice, like my car had won the Super Bowl, except not.
We had one day at work at the day job where everyone was like, it's snowing, it's hailing. And I'm like, no, it's grappling. And they're just like, what? I was like, I know, I'm a buzzkill.
Like the word
Oh,
grappling.
so-
I'm sure a lot of jujitsu folks out there like that word too.
So speaking of grappling, because this is something we encounter as meteorologists a lot. What is something that you? Oh yes, there's juice. Hello, right on time. So what is one thing that you will say as a meteorologist, and you just say it in normal conversation, and then people around you are just like, what?
Yeah.
So
CAD.
tell me your one thing that.
CAD. Or wedge. The wedge. The CAD. Yes.
Ding, 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 ding,
And
ding.
you're like, what is that? And then you have to go and tell them.
I got one that came up recently. The zones, the regions, like Piedmont. We say that assuming people know where Piedmont is.
I'm going to have to ask for Candice to repeat the question because I had to step away and save a 1099 INT form from my cat who was trying to eat. So please go again, Candice.
Important things. What I was saying is, like, as meteorologists, we have so much like jargon and lingo on our own, and like we just spout it out sometimes, not realizing it. Like, what is something that you've said and then like you get some really strange looks from people?
Oh, it's definitely differential positive vorticity advection. Absolutely.
Everyday conversation lingo right there.
Yeah.
Right. No, actually, I think I was kind of thinking the same thing as James there as the regions, because especially even in South Carolina, we have several different regions, and the upstate, the Midlands, Central Savannah River area, Low Country, PD, and not everybody realizes what region of the state they're in, and it applies to regions of the country too. Like, how do you define the Mid-Atlantic? How do you define the Southeast? How do you define Southern Plains? And I mean, when it comes to South Carolina, even you ask someone from York, Chester, and Lancaster counties which region they're in. Are you in the Midlands or are you in the upstate? And they say a fourth of them say one, a fourth of them say the other, and half say neither one. So in my opinion, those three counties should be their own region for everyone to get confused about. So I think James has a very good point there.
Thanks, Frank.
I'd say folks are always asking me, what's it going to do tomorrow? Is it going to storm? And I constantly am like, well, this is really hard, especially in the warmer months, right? Because I constantly find myself, well, it depends on how far inland the sea breeze front penetrates. And they're kind of like, whoa, I wasn't asking. Like, I get into this spiel about the sea breeze front and where it might end up, and that's going to be the storm line, right? Like, it's so hard to just tell people it may rain in your front yard, but not your backyard, right? It's so difficult. I say I'm not. It's hard to say. If you're a little further inland, you probably see more. Closer to the coast, you may see less. And then they come up with the whole 50 part. You can be 50% wrong, and I'm like, well, that's not really how it works. But I'd say I get wrapped up into that a lot, where I start talking about wind directions and things, and people just kind of tune out. So, yeah. Guilty.
I think I've got two. One of them would be undercast. And everyone's familiar with overcast, but I use undercast in casual conversation a lot, and it just makes people confused. Even it's like, say you're on a plane,
I'm confused.
Yeah, it's confusing. There's clouds under you, but people are like, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous. So that's one. The other one is probably orographic lift. I know that doesn't sound like something that would work into everyday conversation, but that is everyday life up here, and it just A, it's confusing, and B, sounds a little dirty to the untrained ear. So I just generally stay away from that.
Is that everybody?
No,
I think so.
Jared.
I was gonna say mine. Oh, go ahead.
Any meteorological phrase with the word moist in it? Deep moist convergence is a personal favorite. That one really gets everybody, makes everybody pay attention. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of moisture converging, and the column is very wet, and then I just go down a rabbit hole of double entendres. So yeah, anything with the word moist, it's a really great way to scare, or you separate the wheat from the chaff. I feel like. I feel like that the Weather Service's entrance exam, if there is such a thing, should be like they should put you in a room, lock you in a room, and say with the word moist around you. And if you can survive that, you can write an AFD.
There are a lot of moist columns in the Low Country, right?
Mm-hmm. It's true. Yeah, I mean, we had moist onshore flow today.
Yeah, moist horizontal advection.
I was gonna say I have three that I deal with a lot. So like one I would say is just the word convective. A lot of people don't know what that means because it comes from convection, like heat rising, but that doesn't like always click sometimes. So I talk about how like cumulus clouds are convective clouds. So that's what I always have to kind of explain. Warm nose in the winter. When we talk about the warm nose, that one is one that I feel like we have to explain a lot, especially around, the Carolinas, because it's always an issue. And then this one time I was with my coworkers and we were talking about atmospheric rivers, and I was like, oh yeah, the Pineapple Express. And they were like, what? And then, of course, like they're referencing like the movie, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, the movie, or you're supposed to live in Hawaii to have that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. I haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah. So good stuff. But yeah, like I just feel like we use jargon a lot. And it's funny to like get those perceptions from people who don't necessarily understand the jargon.
As a non-sports person, when regular people use any sort of sports jargon, I get very confused.
Yes.
Yeah. Not a fan of sports.
I think that's the fun part too.
No sports
like
for me.
Working at the Schiele, I was gonna say working at the Schiele Museum, like, and teaching weather to 2nd and 5th graders a lot of the day. Like, I have learned how to really like tone down a lot of the jargon, and it's like using very simple words to explain things, but it's a lot of fun.
That's also your broadcast training, I think. It's like, what is the general public going to comprehend about this?
But Candice, how are the kids going to learn about differential positive vorticity advection?
Okay, so the atmosphere spins in different ways. Sometimes a little stronger, sometimes a little weaker.
I like it.
No, but like we do break down things like a hurricane. Like it's really hard to explain like the intricacies of a hurricane to a 2nd grader, and especially do it in like 2 minutes. So what I end up doing is, because they're usually coming in classrooms, I tell them that a hurricane is just like a classroom. It's a collection of thunderstorms that are moving around together. You can take an individual student out, and that would be like an individual thunderstorm. But when you put them all together and they all do things that the teacher is saying, you've got a hurricane. And we just kind of leave it at that.
Then they all start running in a circle.
You know.
That's not a bad analogy.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, and you definitely have to keep an eye on them.
Just leave them on their own long enough. It gets warm in there, and the Coriolis effect just takes over, and they just start swirling and destroying everything.
That, and I think my favorite one to tell kids is high and low pressure. So, like, trying to get the kids to understand, like, what's the difference between high and low pressure. So I tell them, I'm like, okay, we're going to put everybody in this room on a football field. Will you have room to run around? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, awesome. I was like, so do you think your pressure is high or low? And they're like, no, low. And then, okay, go find it. Go look. He can't. Anyways, so high pressure, I tell the kids, I'm like, now let's pretend we put everybody in this room in a closet. I was like, you're going to have room to run around. They're like, no. And I'm like, our tension's going to get high? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, that's high pressure. That's high pressure. So, like, that's one way I use it. Like, just using relatable things for people, I think, is the easiest thing to do.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that is pretty good. I mean, I wouldn't even, gosh, it's like you start talking about clockwise and counterclockwise, and boy, are they learning that now. I mean, how do they know what's what? So it's interesting.
But my watch doesn't move. So, I was at a preschool. Preschooler asked me, how does radar work?
Wow.
So of course, like, I'm on the spot. This is like back when I was on TV, and I was like, well, great, let's talk about it. So I got 2 kids up there, and I put them like 10 feet apart. And I told the one kid, I was like, okay, I want you to go tell that other kid the number 3. All right. And so like this kid comes up and travels, and it was like they played the telephone game and told the number 3 and brought it back and told me the number. And I was like, that's what a radar does. It goes out in the atmosphere, it looks at whatever's there, and then it comes back and it tells us. And I was like, and that is my preschool version of a radar.
I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. That was pretty good.
Thank you.
Like it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We left out a little bit of the nuances there.
I think it got most of it.
Exactly. It would have been much better if I'd have had like one of the dog, like cones of shame. That would have been like, we don't really hear anything right here.
Yeah. You're like too close, can't see. Also too high.
Okay.
Too low.
So what is a lightning round again? So here we're going to do a lightning round. So what is your guys' favorite weather movie?
Oh no.
Twister.
That's easy.
So original,
good.
I'm a
guys.
Twister fan.
Well,
I mean,
if
it's
all
sort-
the
it's
other
sort of
movies
like-
didn't suck.
I mean, it's sort of like, it's there's it's almost like the Point Break of weather, but there was some really cool concepts in that movie, and they used the NSSL, for instance, and they had some real good instrumentation and some radar equipment, and they really kind of spawned a whole generation of meteorologists and they really, and storm chasers. So it really kicked off something really neat and unique.
And lots of Van Halen.
It was so good that we hope no one ever does it again, because there's already more meteorologists than there are weather jobs. So we don't want them to inspire anymore because we need a job.
Frank, you have a job now. It's okay.
I'm not the only person who has that issue or has had that issue recently.
If Hollywood tries to remake Twister, I just can't.
I hear there's talks of it though.
Oh,
There's
please,
talk of it.
no.
Yeah. I heard
Would we
there's
be surprised?
talks.
Can we please
The
honor Bill
effects were pretty
Paxton's
good
memory?
back then, but imagine how great they'd be now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd just say, can we honor Bill Paxton's memory and just leave it alone? Like, it's like, I don't know. I don't know how you would do Twister again. Would you bring back Helen Hunt? Because you know how all these movies, they bring back some of the older actors and for fan service, and then they try to introduce new people to you.
Well, Jared, look at Luke Skywalker and Boba Fett.
Right.
Hey, that technology's in now. You can put
Mm-hmm.
your face on someone else 20 years from now and still be you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
And that's a very frightening. And that's a very frightening prospect. I don't think anybody would want that. In fact, I could probably crash a computer. It's like, oh, Jared's face that MP4. Stop error.
Yeah, hopefully if they do something with Twister, it'll be more like a sequel than an actual remake, because I wouldn't want them to remake Twister, not without a lot of the original cast still involved. And
yeah, no Bill Paxton.
That, and I feel like
No Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Well, I feel like, if they remake it, like, incorporate, like, updated technology and, like, what we've got going on and such. But I think also because of the age that we're in, I feel like there needs to be a definite, like, positive reinforcement of, like, when tornado warnings are issued, please actually do something.
That's true. Anything that kind of pulls that back into public awareness.
So there's a new movie. There's a new movie that come out just recently that actually has a PSA about it. I need to Google the name of it, but it came out in November. And
is it the one that was all over Twitter there for a little bit?
Yeah. And I watched it. I mean, the quality was a little shaky, but the messaging was really good. I mean, it talks about where you needed to go during tornadoes and safe places and things like that. So it didn't get a lot of attention. It didn't have any big name stars in it, but it was good. The PSA in that was good with that movie.
Not to take like a dark turn here, but have you guys seen the movie Don't Look Up?
Mm-hmm.
It's the one about like the comet apparently going to hit Earth. I feel like that one, like watching that one as a meteorologist and as someone who studies astronomy now, I'm kind of like, it was scary of how real I felt people reacted and how like politics and all that stuff came into play. And like, it makes me think like, what if like a big weather event does happen? Like how are people going to react and take things? That I think there was a lot of really neat messaging in there, like beyond just like a comment.
I feel like I've pulled away
Earth.
from a lot of media like that the past 2 years. My brain is so taxed out that all I want is like dumb comedies. So maybe I'll come back around to that one.
Sharknado.
Yeah, I don't like. Yeah.
Not that.
There it is. There it is. That's my weather
not
movie.
that stupid, no.
I didn't even
There
think
it is.
about that one.
Yeah. Oh, you can meet Ian Ziering with a chainsaw, and the shark coming in. I mean that. Oh, how did I forget that?
Jared, it's all about aerodynamics and atmospheric dynamics at this point with sharks, right?
Right.
The size, the shape. Come on, they precipitate differently, right?
Exactly. And you
All
got to
right,
use
group
bombs to blow up
eyewall.
the tornadoes.
Eye roll, I mean.
All right, so I got another question for you guys. So what is one thing that you've learned in your careers, no matter how long or short they may be, about weather? So it can be like a really cool fact. It could be something like you've learned about your local region. Just what's something like really cool about weather that you just like to share with people?
Oh, Evan's hand went up.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I was stumped, but then I wasn't. I think one of the most fascinating parts about local weather, at least for me here in the Carolinas, is that we have our own mountain, Grandfather Mountain. And I know, gosh, I'm already laughing because I say this way too often. We have a mountain in northwestern North Carolina called Grandfather Mountain, and it has extreme winds, far more than anyone really realizes. We talk about Mount Washington as the windiest place on the East Coast, and it is really the windiest place in North America. But Grandfather Mountain, just here in North Carolina, that so many people visit each year, could actually give Mount Washington a run for its money during some of its biggest events. It's not consistent like Washington, but it's super cool and very undiscovered. Especially the upper limit, how high it could actually go, is still yet to be determined. But we know it's extreme, so I go on that tirade all the time. It can be a little annoying for my friends. On the spot.
Were you
Jeopardy
ready?
theme playing on Scotty.
No, I'm trying to think. I'm still trying to think.
Yeah.
All
I guess
right.
I'll go. Or go ahead, James. I can think about mine if you're ready to do yours.
I'm ready. I was gonna say social science. I love everything that the weather industry has been about in the last couple of years to simplify hazards and the way things are getting communicated, and not to get political by any means, but I think the public health sphere now finds itself in that same boat that weather found itself in a couple of years ago, where they're realizing we could be really smart, really factual, but if we don't communicate it in a constant, clear way, it creates a lot of confusion. So I'm going to say social science. Jared?
Never underestimate the wedge.
Bingo. Bingo.
Never, ever, ever underestimate the wedge. And do not trust what a model says when the wedge is going to erode.
That's true.
Never, ever, ever.
I think I learned that the hard way when I got here.
I think you just took.
We all learn it the hard way.
Yep. And to add to that, that's one of my, when we talk about one thing I've learned a lot about weather is about sea breeze structure, whether it be circulations or oscillations. So you have a difference there in which direction the wind is coming from, what type of air sector you're in. The wedge here for the coast doesn't necessarily mean CAD. It can mean a huge explosion of pressure gradient speeds that occurs right as the winds turn on shore. You have that relationship between land and sea. And once you start it up from the east-northeast along our coast for our degree of angle, boy, it can really explode. It can go from 7 knots to 35 knots within a 5 or 10 minute period of time. And that's a straight wind that's not going to stop. It's not a storm wind related either. And then from the southerly winds or the south-southwesterly winds, those are fascinating as well as circulation. So, and all the different kinds of sea breezes, there's more than just those two, and just understanding the relationship, again, land and sea. And now we have sensors along the immediate coastline that can gauge the winds. And so you can kind of see in real time what's going on when the sea breeze comes ashore, and how to gauge that and the strength of what it's going to be for the day. Not to mention it does help create water spouts in the mornings too, early mornings. So it's just fascinating. There's all kinds of little, I've learned so much, and it's from our sensor data too. It's just, Jared, you're right. Never underestimate the wedge, whether inland or along the coastline.
Mm-hmm. That wedge, man, I'll tell you what, that sensor network is invaluable too, because like you can have just a little bit of warm air poke on shore, and that can be the difference between a stable day and a severe weather day. It doesn't take much, especially when you have that coastal front there. It's oh man, there's something about the coast. It's just really
I do appreciate learning about the coast from you guys and the mountains as somebody who lives in neither one of those areas. I'm going to go to Frank so Scotty can keep brainstorming.
Oh, I was hoping to go last, but that's
So
okay.
say your question one more time. Let me, because Jared had my answer, so I want to hear it one more time.
Sorry, Scotty.
You're fine. Candice,
All right,
what was your
so the
say it one more
question
time?
so the question was like, what is one like weather fact or just something like you always like to share about weather? Whether it be like a specific fact or something you've learned from your area, just something that you always like to share.
Okay. I've got a second one.
Okay.
You want me to go ahead and go?
Go ahead.
All right. Mine is your weather app sucks. That's mine.
I almost spit that Coke out.
That's what I tell people. They're telling me it's gonna rain or snow, and I'm like, no, that's not how it works out. I love to explain, like, this is great for, just looking outside, getting your current observations, but the stuff that goes into your weather apps changes every 6 hours. As we get new data in, it changes, and there's no one in this phone right here that is actually put in human input into what the data is spitting out. And so, like today, the temperature was forecasted to be like 64, 65 where I live. We ended up at like 54 because we were catted in. The wedge really built in until late in the afternoon, and everybody thought, it was going to be a warm day, and it wasn't. So it's all about using this as a tool to kind of see what's going on currently, but always go back to your favorite TV station, a local trusted weather source, the National Weather Service. There's so many places that you can get a great forecast from. Just don't rely on your app. And it's so funny. I was actually watching TV this weekend. I didn't realize that there was a weather app, and I won't mention their name. They're actually doing commercials now on TV about how you should download their app. And I'm like, that's interesting. So, but yeah, I love trying to dispel the rumor that your weather app's the gospel, because it's really not. I mean, it's great to give you the currents, and it's great to alert you of warnings and watches, but that's about it. So there you go.
Frank?
The main thing that the weather has taught me, and this will fit in with, I think, everything everyone else has said, is that the weather has taught me humility and how to accept the fact that every now and then the weather is going to hand your $$ to you, and you have to learn to accept that with grace. If you're going to be an arrogant, you're not going to do well in this business, because the weather will hand your rear end to you, and you have to learn some humility to deal with that.
That is exactly right.
Ryan Vaughn has the best way to put this. He's in Jonesboro, Arkansas. For those of you who don't know, he's a really good broadcast meteorologist. He says, "Weak forecast and God laughs." And in fact, today was a really good example of that. We were thinking 68 and mostly rain free, and it rained all day. It didn't get above 60. So there you go. I mean, we just happens to the best of us. And yeah, the weather is humbling, and that is. Amen to that.
Especially here in the Carolinas, because there's always that degree. Candice was talking about the warm nose in the wintertime. That degree or two that's warmer above us, 5,000-6,000 feet off the ground, can do a lot of craziness to a forecast. And the CAD or cloud cover can really kill a severe weather forecast. And it's not as clear cut here in the Carolinas as it is in some other locations. So it definitely humbles you here in the Carolinas.
Yeah, I like
Candice,
James Spann
just today.
He likes to. I like James Spann. He's real good at how he handles. Not only does it come with busting a forecast, or like you said, Frank, handing it to you. It's how you deal with the fallout. Some of the people, they get really angry at you about things, and you have to. Even in the sailing industry, I get folks sometimes they want to let me have it, and I'm like, well, you have to learn how to deal with that and move on without it, crushing you. So yeah.
You do have to learn to let some things roll off.
And I feel like that's a skill that I learned as a broadcast meteorologist that I'm still using today, is like, when you're trying to explain something, like a very complicated forecast. I was over in Eastern North Carolina. So, I mean, it would be like, we're dealing with snow up in like Edgecombe County, and then we've got potential for severe weather in Carteret County. And it's all happening in 24 hours. And I think the biggest thing was, not only like just conveying like, here's what's going to happen, but it's like, here's what's going to happen, but here are some things that I'm kind of watching. And if this happens, we may bust it. Like, if this happens, it may amp it up. Like, I think just being really transparent with like, here's what we think, but here are some things to consider. And I think that helps people, because then it's like, okay, if we bust a forecast, well, hey, like, there was that potential that she talked about. They're not as angry.
The
Easily.
move to probabilities, both in just our communication, but also the genesis of the forecast and the move to the real, like the wholesale embrace of ensembles over deterministic guidance really, really helps. It's not perfect. We're still going to get it wrong every once in a while, but man, has that made things so much better.
Well, I promised I wouldn't
Definitely.
produce, but I want to make sure we give Candice our thanks and praise because I know she's got to peel out here in a minute. Not that I'm kicking her out. We never kick anybody out, but I know she's got to
Yeah.
hop off. So thank you for taking us through that, Candice, and turning the tables back on us. It's a fun little experience that we get to do not frequently here. So thank you for doing that.
You're most welcome. And let's see, I'm going to ask one more question before
Sure.
I have to get off here.
Okay,
So
by all
let's
means.
see. I got to think of something like really hard. Let's see. Give me your most mind-blowing weather fact. Like if you could just walk up to somebody on the street and give them like a one sentence, like, pooh, what would it be? Welcome to my line of work.
We all just failed.
Mind-blowing weather fact. I think it would have to be that there are 2 places in South Carolina that have seen at least 2 feet of snow from a snowstorm. Caesar's Head, which is not terribly surprising because it's 1,000 feet in elevation. The other is Rimini, which is actually east of Columbia. In the 1973 storm, there was 24 inches of snow there.
Classic.
And it happened in less than 24 hours.
Nice.
Wow.
That conflicts with my fun fact, which was going to be it never snows south of 85.
Yeah, it does.
My weather fact is not on Earth. Jovian winds, where winds can be in excess of 500 miles per hour on Jupiter.
Well,
Way to think outside the
You can
scope.
take that up to 1,200. You can take that up to 1,200 on Neptune.
Good point.
And on it's like HD 133B, the winds are close to 5,000 miles an hour.
Good Lord, is that another?
I only know
gas
this because I
giant?
wrote a show called Weather on Other Planets. So there you go.
Is that HP? Is that another gas giant?
It's a very large exoplanet.
Wow, wow.
Yes.
That's just insane.
It rains. Okay, it's so hot. Okay, because it's so cool. Let me tell you about this right quick. See, this is one of my like mind-blowing facts here. So HD 133B, it has about 5,000 mile an hour winds. The temperature is about 2,500 degrees. And because of that, it actually rains molten glass.
What?
Wow.
Saving the
There you
best
go.
for last on that fun fact.
There you
Get
go.
your
Sounds like a
titanium,
great place to go on
umbrellas
vacation
out, right?
But here's a few of my fun facts before I go. So April showers bring May flowers. April is climatologically one of the driest months in the Charlotte area. There you go. Another one. Oh, hello. He knocked my camera over. Another
those
one I love to tell
12,000 mile an hour
people is
winds.
that yes, the lightning bolt can be 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun. That one's always a fun one. And that baseball-sized hail will fall at nearly 100 miles an hour. So as fast as a major league baseball pitcher can throw it at you.
Wow.
So there you go. Those are my 3. All righty, guys. I got to head out because I've got 2 toddlers who need some sleep.
Well, thank you
Thank
for
you,
hopping
Candice.
on. We
Thanks
appreciate
so
that.
much.
It's good to see you as always. And
You're
people can come
welcome.
see you in the museum in Gastonia if they want more of those fun facts.
Yes. SchieleMuseum.org. I run the planetarium. So if you are loving weather and space, we do all this stuff. And then I'll go ahead and plug it. I know we're about to go to bed. July 23rd, we're going to do Weatherproof. So it's a day all about weather. So, yes, you should be
Put that
hearing
on my
about that soon.
calendar.
And you guys will hear about it much sooner here soon. But yes, if you love weather, that's a day to come out.
July 23rd. We heard
Like
it here
I see
first.
these guys here. Oh,
That-
there we go.
Thank you, Candice. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a minute and 45 seconds with our after party as we are celebrating episode 400. 400 of the Carolina Weather Group.
400.
And let you guys see what it is that I'm experiencing.
Trying to get a direct measurement with a handheld Kestrel anemometer here. We'll see what we can pick up, but and there goes change.
When a tornado-warned cell came through the neighborhood and it brought down several large pines, just like the one you're seeing right here behind me. To give you a sense of what the aftermath of storm damage smells like, it smells very heavily of pine and also sounds like chainsaws. We have another tree down here. This one just barely missing this brick home.
I mean, this is incredible. Let me turn the camera around. Get us back into kind of a dry view.
And I get up here, and all of a sudden, the storm surge started. And all of a sudden, I ended up in about 4 feet of water.
I'm Scotty Powell here reporting just outside of Sparta, North Carolina, where you've seen a lot of the earthquake damage. Again, a 5.1 magnitude earthquake rocked Sparta, North Carolina earlier this morning, just after 8 a.m.
If you're going to look at the footing of that, you'll see where it was a twist. Very severe wind that caused these structures.
From Gaston County to back here in Mecklenburg County, those were just 2 of the tornado warnings that were issued here for the greater Charlotte area.
I'm not one for hyperbole, but it's countless at this point. There's trees on houses, there's a lot of roads that are blocked. We're just trying to get cleaned up so people can get through.
Have you ever seen the Dan River like this before?
No, not that I can recall. I mean, I've seen it fairly flooded before, but I've never seen it to where we're now kind of asking ourselves, okay, a couple more feet and it might get over those bridges.
That's right. It was so good I wanted to play it twice. And welcome back. This is the after party of the 400th episode of the Carolina Weather Group. We're so happy you were here, and we're glad that Candice was able to come on and ask questions of us. And now we want to ask questions of each other, as Frank just suggested. I like that idea, but also take some of your viewer questions. I also, guys, and this is, again, super just casual, even more casual than our, like, Let's Talk Carolina Weather series. So I know we just got all pumped up from that music. There is actually an add music functionality in Restream Studio that we've never used before. What are we feeling? Like, lounge, hip hop, lo-fi, chill hop, ambient, future pop. What do you guys think? What should we check out?
Lo-fi.
Yeah.
Lo-fi. Yeah. Okay. I should have saw that one coming. Let's see what this sounds like. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Very contemporary. That's a nice appeal.
All right. There you go. Well, this is the after party of the 400th episode of the Carolina Weather Group. Ryan has a question. He's watching on Facebook Live. We didn't prompt this question, by the way. Do you carry Carolina Weather Group merchandise? The answer to that question, Ryan, is not yet. And I would be very interested in the reaction from our audience on if that is something you all want. We don't even have it as folks who work on the show, and I know we're interested in doing it. There's a bit of a cost analysis associated with opening an online store, kind of, if you will. So if we can see enough hands go up, I think we'd be very open to doing that. But Ryan did have another question, guys, that had nothing to do with making money here at the Carolina Weather Group. Don't forget to super chat or click Patreon in the links. What are the different stations have different weather forecasts? I think he's talking about TV stations. Frank, I'll let you take this one. As a broadcast meteorologist for so many years, why do different broadcast stations have different weather forecasts?
Do you mean like in the same market or?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, I would say that's because you have different sources for them, really. You have different meteorologists, and just like with a doctor, you get a diagnosis, you may want to get a second opinion. You go to a broadcast meteorologist, they have one opinion. Channel 4 might have a different opinion than Channel 13 on how a storm or other weather situation is going to shake out. So it's not because there's one or the other is wrong. It's just that each one may have a slightly different opinion of how the weather's going to take place or how the weather's going to happen. And it's not that there's nothing wrong with that at all. Vive la différence. But like for the same reason, like I said, if you go to another doctor for a second opinion, you might want to go to a meteorologist for a second opinion, another meteorologist if you have a critical event that is really important to you.
Makes me think of that whole wedge CAD cold air damming conversation we were just having about whether or not you can trust your apps. And, it all has to do with how everyone thinks the weather is going to play out. I mean, the analogy I always give is like you get multiple people in the car and everyone's going to have a different way of navigating there. Like I'm the worst backseat driver, and that's kind of how weather works. By the way, Rob Fowler watching tonight, our 400th episode. So thank you very much, Rob, for those congratulatory messages and for sharing on Twitter tonight. So if you're watching us for the first time because you trust Rob and Rob put out this tweet, well, thank you very much to Rob and to all of you who are joining us here for this 400th episode of a show about weather, science, technology, and more from the Carolinas and beyond. And again, guys, remember, 400 episodes, that's just of the weekly interview series that airs Wednesday nights. It doesn't count hours of live coverage or special spin-offs, as you got a little bit of a snippet there in the last few minutes. Frank, I like the question you put in chat. Could you pose it to us?
Absolutely. And I'll even go first with the answer for my answer so that the rest of you have some time to think about what your answer is. But the question is, what is your biggest meteorological pet peeve? What annoys you most that happens in the weather business? For me, it's when someone calls a front a boundary. Fronts are not boundaries. They're zones. Now, sometimes the zone's really narrow, but there are very few discontinuities in the atmosphere. So that's what bugs me the most and it happens a lot when you hear people calling a front a boundary, because it isn't really a boundary.
I hate the news cliche, it came without warning. Did it? Did it come without warning?
Yeah, that's really annoying too, isn't it?
Very infrequently does it come without a warning. Just because you didn't get the warning doesn't mean there wasn't a warning.
Mine is, you can be wrong half the time and still get paid, because the idea.
What do you mean half? It's more like 90% that we're wrong and still get paid. Yeah, that's bad too.
Frank, no.
Wait, are we
just
getting
the opposite? It's just the opposite. If we had such
Right.
low success rates, we would not get paid. That's the way it works. We put a lot of time into everything we do, and just because
We're so
there's a
wrong. Why do
50,
you listen to us?
Yeah, well, just because there's a 50% chance of rain, you have to understand that too. It's more like there's so much. Anyways, there's just so much that goes into it, and some folks, they do it just for fun. But there are folks out there that truly believe, hey, they can still be wrong 50% of the time and still get paid. So that's my pet peeve. That's all I got to say about it.
I would just be happy to get paid to do this show, since we don't. All right, who's next with a pet peeve?
Yeah, I can go. So one of my biggest pet peeves is, and I'm going to be rather generic about this just because I know it's after, Carolina Weather Group After Dark, but generic is better. When some entities put out snowfall forecasts far too early, way too far out from the system, and it forces local meteorologists to take a stance on snowfall totals when in all reality they don't have, it's too soon to be making those forecasts. They're all but skillless.
Good Lord, Evan, you nailed it. The single run deterministic runs, those put us all in a bad position, because now the expectation is way up here. Mm-hmm. And we have to wish cast it, or else they'll say he doesn't know what he's talking about.
And it's not just randos on Twitter and Facebook. I mean, this is an issue that I think we see in the weather enterprise. I know we see in the weather enterprise, and it's challenging for locals. It's also challenging for national corporations. When do you pull the trigger on making that forecast? That's not an easy decision when you're trying to be generic. But we can make up some ground there. We can do better. Scotty, I think I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, I was going to agree with you, Evan. That's my biggest pet peeve. So I won't take yours. I'm going to piggyback off it a little bit. And I've started seeing this the last couple of years here in North Carolina. A few outlets, and I guess there's really nothing wrong with it, but I still think it's a little attention getting. Is they're starting to throw out 15-day snow probabilities, and we know there's so much that can change within 3 days, let alone 10 or 15 days. And so everybody sees, March 3rd's got a 52% chance of snow. And yeah, I know we're using ensembles, but March 4th or 3rd or whatever is still 2 weeks away. There's a lot that can change, but they see that 52% and they're all hysteric. Oh, big snowstorm's coming. So we also have to put the fire out on that as well. So that's going to be mine. I'm going to kind of piggyback off Evan. And I know we use ensembles a lot, but we still don't need to throw out there that 52% of them are saying it's going to snow 15 days from now. That's not necessary.
Jared and Shay, can you imagine doing that in South Carolina every single day? Nope, 0 chance of snow. Day 10, 12, 13, 14, next day. Zero chance of snow for days 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and the next day after that, over and over again. Mm-hmm. A 1% chance of snow. Would he really hyping it up?
Mm-hmm. It would be. No, absolutely. I think for me, it is when people get mad when the severe weather event did not destroy their house. When people you forecast a severe weather event and understanding that these are kind of isolated incidents in most cases. It's very rare that you have a widespread event, but the probabilities are there, and some people could see that, especially when some people do see it and they call your forecast a bust. They say you're overhyping it. It's like, well, I don't know. I mean, 30 miles away, I don't think they thought we were overhyping it. That one grinds my gears, and to piggyback off of that is, why are you interrupting my show for a tornado warning? Gosh darn it, I want to watch Wheel of Fortune. And it's like, well, hey, okay, Wheel of Fortune is not life or death. The tornado barreling in on a location is.
Spoiler alert, we have a show coming up about new technology that's supposed to help with this problem.
Yep. I want to piggyback off of you, Jared, because the conception, the concept that all damage and wind is tornado related. No, straight line damage and wind can do just as much, if not more damage than a tornado. So people will literally argue with you. It was a tornado here, and it's like, no, it was just a downburst or
it's much more
or
common.
Whatever. I mean,
yeah.
And people really get aggravated when there's not a tornado there. I don't know. Maybe you win a gold medal or something for going through that. But yeah, I want to piggyback off that too.
Yeah, you're right.
Here's my question. And actually, can I change the music up just to jazz it up a little bit here? Let's see.
I was just going to send a message about how much I was digging this lo-fi.
Okay, fine. I won't touch it.
You're good.
Yeah,
Fine.
might as well flip that to Rage Against the Machine.
Let's see. I don't have anything that fits that. But what's this?
I think I'm just digging music in general. This is nice.
Yeah. If you're in the comments, let us know what you want to hear. All right, I'll leave this for a second. I'll let it play out. Earliest weather memory. And I'm having a hard time discerning the exact one, but I'm thinking back to elementary school. I'm thinking tornado drills. But we did have some sort of tropical system in 3rd grade that I think intrigued me greatly. And I want to say, and this may be a false memory, but we came really close to the eye wall of whatever this system was. I want to say somebody Google Tropical Storm Cindy or something. And I remember that was really fascinating. That was the first time I think I learned that there was this calmness in the center of a storm, and whether it came directly over us or not, I think that was eye-opening, pun intended, for me. So I'm going to say tropical, even though I have many, many memories living on Long Island, waking up to busted snowfalls because of warm air coming in off the ocean. So, all right, guys. Jared, what's your earliest weather memory?
Ooh, that's a good one. Moving out to South Carolina from the West, where thunderstorms rarely, if ever, happen, and hearing a crack of thunder, and I was back on the changing table very quickly. I think that really about sums it up. That and Hurricane Hugo. Now, I wasn't here for Hugo. We were in Pennsylvania, but we were renting out our house here in 1989, and watching that on the Weather Channel, watching John Hope, watching those guys, broadcast that, and again, what the Weather Channel was doing then was still very new and somewhat groundbreaking at that point. We take it for granted now, but then that was not, the kind of hurricane coverage was not. I think so. I remember being glued to that, and and from there.
So putting that genie back in the bottle. Scotty?
So mine was the blizzard of '93. I think I was 3 years old. And the reason I remember this was my aunt lived in Nashville, Tennessee. We were driving back home and started to snow. My dad, he's a great driver. He asked the highway patrol, "Hey, is the gorge passable?" And he said it was open. So we got to the North Carolina line, and Interstate 40 was shut down. So had to sleep in a vehicle overnight through the blizzard of '93 with all that snow. And I just remember as a little kid, sleeping in a car overnight with snow, and you'd crank the car every 15-20 minutes to stay warm. And I don't know, that's just the earliest memory that I remember.
Frank?
Yeah.
My earliest weather memory. Y'all gonna love this one. I was at Carowinds. I was probably 3. And I was definitely 3 because I remember a lady asking me how old I was, and I went,
like every good 3-year-old.
And we were going to ride. We were actually going to ride the log flume, and the reason why is because it was about 100 degrees that day. It was so hot. We were at Carowinds, and so that would be my earliest weather memory is the heat wave of sometime in '75, I guess, because that's when I would have been 3. And going to Carowinds and riding the log flume over and over and over again.
Shay?
Oh, Hurricane David, 1979. I was 7 years old and was fascinated by weather. I know my dad was a meteorologist in the Air Force. He was just out of the Air Force and beginning his law firm in Charleston, but he was still very much active with the Air Force here. And I remember him taking me to the base and showing me some cool stuff. It was really neat. But just hearing about it, all the destruction down in the Dominican Republic, and like you're just the buildup of it all, and everyone's scared, and you see people boarding up windows, and it was pretty eventful. I mean, it did some pretty good damage around the Charleston area. Nothing like Hugo, and I was here for that, Jared, too. So I've seen some massive destruction from a major hurricane like that. But David's what got me in my earliest age, what really glued me. That and the ice storm the year before that. So I think Hurricane David pretty much did it.
Evan?
Yeah, mine's kind of secondhand. So I was only 5 when Katrina hit, just 16 years ago, do the math. I'm pretty young. I definitely remember while I was living in Charlotte at the time, there were folks from New Orleans that came up and stayed at the Bojangles Coliseum, I want to say, in Charlotte. And I may be getting the Coliseum wrong.
That sounds right.
Anyways, What's that?
That sounds right.
Yeah. Stayed somewhere in downtown Charlotte, and I can remember as a 5-year-old going with my mom and kind of knowing a little bit about what was going on and why they were there, and giving away my favorite toy. And it was, to this day, I'm still a little scarred by that. I know it's a good thing to give away the toys to the kids who didn't have a home anymore, but I was hurt. And it was just such a weird situation as a 5-year-old to be like, yeah, these people have lost everything and they're hundreds of miles from home. At the time, I didn't fully understand that. But anyway,
giving up a toy is one of the biggest things a child can do.
No, it was a sacrifice.
Shay has a question, but first I got to say, Shay, what type of music does your question warrant?
Oh, James, you do whatever you.
All right, you ask the question and then I'll match you.
Gosh, I had the question and now.
Do you want me to ask one more?
Go for it. Let me think back on that because it was.
Scotty, I'm going to steal your question. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready.
What is your weather journey?
Oh, my weather journey.
Scotty's first question to every first-time guest.
Oh.
Scotty, why don't
I have to go first?
You don't know the answer to this?
I mean, I feel like my weather journey, we've talked about it. Obviously, it was Eric Thomas. Getting hooked up with Eric Thomas at an early age. Really being interested in weather. My grandpa and I would always talk about the weather. They lived in a mobile home, and every time that there was a tropical system or something like that would be moving in, I always liked spending time with my grandpa. So we'd always tell him, hey, the wind's going to get bad. You need to come, stay in the house. We've got better structure or whatever. But so we'd always talk about that. And then meeting Eric Thomas really kind of pushed me into wanting to do this, and then just pursuing it throughout college. My degree is in education, science education, which I haven't told anybody, but I got accepted to Penn State to finish out my weather certificate program. So starting that off in the fall. So I got four classes left to get that done. And
awesome. Burying the lead tonight.
Very cool.
Yeah. So working on some things behind the scenes, but I do a lot of forecasting for the Charlotte Motor Speedway, Bristol Motor Speedway. I really enjoy that because I love sports and I love weather. And I've helped out with emergency management here in Western North Carolina with flooding and winter storms. And so, that's kind of the weather story. So my goal to really push me into that certification is to get on TV. So we'll see how that goes in the next year or so. But so that's my weather journey. I want to toss it to Evan because Evan, what's your weather journey?
Yeah, so I'm not a one storm guy. Growing up in the Charlotte area, I started to take an interest in the weather around second grade. We had the part of Charlotte I lived in was a little bit of a tornado alley there in the 2000s. So I can remember a couple of times seeing tornadoes and being intrigued. So that passion and interest that seed had been planted by the time I was in the fourth grade. And Larry Sprinkle, if you're in the Charlotte area, you know Larry Sprinkle. Larry Sprinkle was supposed to come to my school and give us a weather talk. And then that morning, my teacher was killed in a car wreck on the way there. And I never got to meet Larry Sprinkle. And that passion it was there, but it never fully accelerated. And then in the seventh grade, I had a teacher who really pushed me. She could tell that I liked it, and she pushed me for it. And I decided that it was something I was interested in pursuing. So I started looking at weather models every day. And from there, it just snowballed downhill and finally kind of, this was, well, maybe for no one else but me, but it was a moment of just completion when I got to meet Larry Sprinkle in person at the Hurricane Hunters Day. I was 19 years old, I guess, with Scotty and James was there as well, I believe, and Jared. I don't remember who all was there.
I wasn't there.
Jared wasn't there.
I wasn't there either.
Yeah, no, I was there.
But Larry was there, and
it was
Chris.
It was Chris.
It was Chris. But getting to meet Larry and
it makes so much sense now because when Evan was talking to Larry, like Evan had this big smile, and I was like, I really didn't know the backstory until right now.
Yeah. So it was cool telling Larry that story. He actually remembered that class or that day, and I don't know. It was neat to come full circle. And nowadays, here I am. It just keeps snowballing downhill. I love this job. I love being here with y'all, and look forward to a career.
It's quite memorable. Well, it sounds like I don't have to call Larry to try to meet you now. It sounds like you've already done that. So, shrug. Shay.
Oh, weather journey, boy. We're just discussing earlier about Hurricane David and an ice storm in 78 or 77, David in 79, and then my dad teaching me a lot of things when I was a kid, a lot of intermediate things. And then taking that forward in science projects, going all the way through elementary, middle school. I wasn't really that drawn to math. I could do the math at that time. By the time you get up to high school, my interest changed, but my heart stayed with weather, and I kept doing it. I kept watching. I was glued to the Weather Channel back then, right? That's all I did. I would sit there and play my guitar, the little licks with the local on the 8s, and they'd have these little blues riffs or whatever, and I would just sit there, and my friends just thought I was crazy. But I was glued to the weather all the time, and I was constantly looking at whatever data I could find and sticking to it. And so right about 2009 rolled around, I got interested in kiteboarding in the Charleston area, and I knew a thing or two about sea breeze structure in the area. I realized there was some sensors, and I was like, oh wow, there's actually some data, that one of the piers at Alpalms Pier and then Fort Sumter Front Range Light, that came about a year later. But so I started doing some forecasting. That's when Facebook kind of started doing their groups, and I created a group. It started to draw interest from the local community, not just kiteboarding, but all of a sudden people were coming there because they wanted to see the forecast I was putting out. Weatherflow is a company that scouted me. Someone talked to them, and then they came and joined the group, and they scouted me out, and then met with me probably a month or two later, and asked me to be the lead in the Southeast region for wind forecasting. So I've been with them since 2012, doing operational wind forecasting for them, and also doing all kinds of really cool projects, outreach projects, new weather station, peer reviews on research. So I've, even without going to school, my degree was actually at College of Charleston, that's my alma mater, in Spanish and minor in German. I kept the meteorology. Scotty, this was a topic that came up on Twitter recently with, do you have to be degreed to be meteorologist? Well, I didn't accept the term, even though Weatherflow called me one, for about at least 6 years or so. After being in the field and being peer reviewed, I think I finally felt comfortable with that title, and other people were already kind of calling me that as well. But it's something that I feel like I was dubbed or inherited rather than went to school and got the degree for it. So it's one of those things I've really just been doing it my whole life, and now I'm just in the profession of doing it. So that's that. It's my weather journey. So it's really interesting. I've learned a lot of the math in the last 10 years. Evan, you're going through it now. You're on the back end, but I mean, I probably haven't taken some of the things you have, but there's a lot that goes into some of the research that we do at Weatherflow, which really is some good math there. So yeah, that's it. So next.
Frank?
Well, I told some of the details, I guess, when Candice asked a question earlier, but I'll go into greater detail now. I'm like Evan. It wasn't just one storm that got me. It actually was another event. When I was a little kid, I actually wanted to be well, the word has suddenly escaped my mind. Astronaut. That's the word I'm looking for. Tell I'm getting old, huh? Anyway, when I was real little, I wanted to be an astronaut, and I used to play with my grandfather. He was Shorty Powers, the old NASA PR guy, and telling me of all the fun things I did in space. So that's an early memory of that other career that I didn't do. But I do remember a bunch of fun storms when I was a kid, like the March 24th of '83 snowstorm, which put down 10 inches. This was the 4th day of spring that year, and it put down 10 inches of snow in Rock Hill. I remember snowstorms fun, and I was interested in the weather, but really sent the weather bug to bite me was actually doing a weather module in our science class when I was in 5th grade. That is what really got me interested in the weather. And I thank Miss Lynn Hamilton, my teacher from 5th grade, for doing that because it set me on the path and developed a passion in the weather that would not be denied. And my weather journey, there were a lot of dips and bends and turns because I had to get through high school first and then get into college. And right out of high school, I met a lady and started a family with her when I was in right out of high school almost. And so that's one detour I had to take was doing that and trying to study something else that I didn't really have the passion for. Didn't even get through the thermodynamics class in engineering that I was trying to do at USC here in Columbia in the early 90s. Just didn't have the passion for it. But I did have the passion for weather, and I always wanted to do that. And finally, my family just said, okay, what is it going to take to get you to do something you enjoy? And I'm like, well, I've always wanted to be a meteorologist. So is there a path we can find to get me to do that? And my mom and dad were sort of instrumental in steering me toward that and finding a good option, which was UNC Asheville, an out-of-state school that was, at the time, very reasonably priced, about the cheapest out-of-state schools you could find. And then it was even cheaper in-state, of course, and I ended up deciding to take one more year away from school and establish residency in North Carolina so that I could qualify for those lower rates. So then I went on to UNC Asheville and did great. I made an A in thermodynamics taught by a meteorology professor, Dr. Heimbach, who was probably the most awesome professor that UNC Asheville's ever had. Him and Brotack were both outstanding professors. And I don't want to discount the other two, Quinlan and Alex Wong, who recently retired from UNC Asheville. They were all great too. But I'm not sure I would have been as successful in meteorology school anywhere else the way I was at UNC Asheville, because those professors, they were all really good, and they all took a great interest in what each individual student. They could do that because it was a small school. We graduated, I think, 18 in 99 when I graduated, and that was the largest graduating class they had at the time. So anyway, from there, again, many years up in Asheville. I mean, up in State College, PA, working for AccuWeather. I don't want to gloss over that because there was a lot of learning up there too from some greats like Bob Spurbeck. I'm glad I can consider him a friend. Dan Kotlowski, who's recently retired from AccuWeather, and many other people like Elliot Abrams and Dr. Joe Sobel, who I learned a lot from, and were very helpful in helping me continue my career. And even though I got downsized out of there, I still have fond memories of being there. And again, thrilled to be back home in South Carolina and serving South Carolina's people at the State Climatology Office.
The thing I like most about your story, Frank, is the impact that all the teachers had, as they do on so many kids and young people, that all those names stuck with you. Jared?
Oh, man. So, I mean, I alluded to this earlier, California boy where there is no weather, moving out to a place that did have weather. And it's like, okay, that immediately is interesting. And the Weather Channel had a lot to do with that. If I would struggle to find anybody my age who's in this line of work or just interest in general who did not have the Weather Channel on all the time. I too enjoyed the Local on the 8's music. We've got a little panelist playlist from last summer that talks all about that. You should go back and find that on the Carolina Weather Group feed. It's quite a lot of fun. Yeah, that was fun. And it's just and not only did I absorb the weather stuff, but I also got, geography. Got really good at geography because they were covering the whole country, so I got to learn a lot about that too. But highlight of that young time was in 5th grade. We launched a television network at my elementary school, and I had a huge laminated map of the Southeast behind me, and I'd draw on the lows and the highs and the fronts, troughs, and I'd go up there and I'd do the whole thing with that. I could at least see what I was doing. Well, not really a green screen thing, but that was super fun. I hope that there is still some footage of that out there. Maybe that'll leak at some point later there. So that's that was cool. And then I took a little break, got into the computer side of things, and programming, just doing random stuff. And that lasted through about high school. And then about 2004, 2005, the weather bug got reawakened when Hurricane Gaston came through, spun up right off the coast and flooded my car. Oh. And I was living in downtown Charleston at the time. In fact, on the street that Evan lived on when he was in Charleston.
It floods a lot, yeah.
And it floods a lot, yeah. It didn't flood as much back then, and so that was a surprising thing for me. And I was on the phone with them, and I had known weather. I mean, that was the thing that I did. So I called the radio station, and they were asking, "Hey, what's going on?" And it's like, okay, well, here's what we've got. We've got the people across the street, floating a bunch of kegs in the water there. We got a lot of flood water out here, so there's a bunch of kegs there. And then I started telling them, well, it looks like the winds have come out of the west, so it looks like it's starting to move north and out of here. And they were like, oh wow, he went from a party animal to a meteorologist. And then they started asking everybody, how many kegs do you have in your flood water? And then you heard 6 beeps, and they were like, well, that's it. And they were off the air because they ran out of generator power. So that was kind of, and that kind of reawakened the whole thing. And
Jared's been tweeting ever since.
And then in 2007 I started. I got Gibson Ridge, and and I've been messing with Weather Underground. I'd run personal weather stations and stuff, and that was a lot of fun. Got the Gibson Ridge radar. Really started to dig into radar. That was really just fascinated by that and all the things that you could do there. And and yeah, I mean, and that was, and that kind of blew up. It was like, GR kind of looked like TV. So I would go on, back then it was Ustream or, Ustream or blog.tv. And I would go on and I would narrate the radar while people were chatting to me. Sound familiar? Doing that in 07, and it was very slow. So suffice to say, from there, a Twitter account followed at CHSWX Twitter account, and I just did that for fun. I was just doing that for some friends of mine. It's like, hey, and the idea is that I take my BlackBerry, and when Weather Underground pushed me a text message that's saying there was a warning, I put the warning out on Twitter, and I was the bot. I was the human bot. And then one day, people found it and started telling me what was going on. And it's like, oh no, I guess I'm committed. And 13 years later, still here, and
still a human bot.
It was still a human bot. It was a little bit more software help, but gotten to meet some great people, gotten to interact with all the guys, much like Shay, the Rob Fowlers and Bill Walshes of the world. Really all of the TV Mets here, gotten to meet and greet with them, and that's been fun. Spent some time, learning about some stuff at the Weather Service, and actually running the Weather Service's software, which has been quite a trip, to say the least. So being able to meld those two passions together really has worked out nicely. And I met these guys. I mean, they're pretty cool. I think we'll keep them. So
okay.
So yeah, I mean, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. There's tons more, but we've got to get out of here at some point.
Yeah, I'm coming up in 90 minutes. I got 3 minutes. Real briefly, my weather journey, my weather career, my career in general probably gets traced back to an ice storm. Happened on Long Island when I was in high school. Convinced my mom to let me put off my homework, and she was my photographer, and I recorded it onto a cassette tape, and then I uploaded it to CNN iReport. This was like at the cutting edge of user-generated content. And then went to school the next day and got called down to the principal's office thinking I was in trouble or something horrible had happened. But apparently they had been playing my tape on TV, and I had to sign some release forms and the such. And everything kind of pegs off of that, because that built a relationship into an internship, which introduced me to the school where I met my wife, where I got my first job, so on and so forth. So if you were to trace all of the decision trees of my life, I think a lot comes off of that. Well, that is episode 400 of the Carolina Weather Group. It seems like we have at least 3 votes here between Ryan on Facebook and Michael on YouTube and our friend Andrew also on Facebook tonight, that we at least apparently got to do some Carolina Weather Groupie shirts or something for our super fans. So
Carolina Weather Groupie, I am on it.
He's on it. So Jared Smith's going to work that up, and that will maybe be the takeaway from episode 400.
Are you saying that you're going to be the Carolina Weather Groupie?
Oh, no, we're making shirts, bro.
all of us. So special shout out to all the people who have laid the path for this show. Scotty Powell, I think you reign as the surviving co-founder, but I think of Ricky Matthews and everyone else who has put their impact on what this show has become over the past, I don't know how many years. I think you said 2013.
I want to say late 2013, like December 2013.
Yeah.
That's almost 10 years, y'all.
Almost. Very long. Well, if you're new here, welcome. We're here every Wednesday night talking science, weather, technology, and more from the Carolinas, typically with newsmakers. This week, we turned it around to ourselves, but don't worry, that's not usually how this goes. If you want to learn more about some of the shows we mentioned in tonight's broadcast, you can find them at the Carolina Weather Group on YouTube. We hope you will check that out. Or if you can't decide, just put on the Carolina Weather Net. It streams for free every day with live weather conditions and the best of the Carolina Weather Group. Well, on behalf of everybody here, with special thanks to Candice, I'm James Brierton in Charlotte. We will see you back next week for more from the Carolina Weather Group. Good night.